Test, test. Testing, testing.
Okay, welcome to the Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for May 21st, 2025. First item is approve the minutes for our meeting of May 14, 2025. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Morning, Mr. Chair. There are 5 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is a request from Live Energy, Inc. to amend its electricity supplier license. Item number 2 is a notification from PEG Bandwidth MD LLC and Unity National LLC of participation in financing arrangements. Items number 3 and 4 are SOS tariff revisions from Potomac Electric Power Company and Delmarva Power and Light Company. And item number 5 is a request from Synergen Panorama 3 LLC for extension of its operational deadline for its community solar project.
Okay, regarding item 1, I move we grant the company's request and remove the permission on the company's electricity and supplier license limited to broker services to serve residential customers. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. Item 2, I move we note the filing. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. Item 3, I move that we accept the tariff provisions for filing with an effective date of June 1, 2025. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. And item 4, I move we accept the tariff provisions for filing with an effective date of June 1, 2025. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. Item 5, I move we grant the company its requested waiver for the operational deadline for the Synergen solar projects until July 15, 2026. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye.
And item number 6 on the administrative agenda consists of revised tariff pages from Maryland Water Service, Inc.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Lucy Shea on behalf of staff, together with Barbara Weber, also on behalf of staff. Before I begin, I'd like to note that the the staff comments that were published on the website, the headers on pages 2 through 6 contain the incorrect information, and the header on the cover page of the staff comments is correct. Maryland Water Service filed its 2024 unaccounted for water surcharge reconciliation for both Pinto and Highland Estates customers, addressing Pinto Water Systems overcollection and Highland Estates Water Systems undercollection of water costs in 2024. Pinto's adjusted UFW percentage was equivalent to 2%, and the Highland Estates was equivalent to 5%. Staff concludes that pursuant to the stipulation and settlement agreement in case 9212, the company met its goal of keeping the annual adjusted UFW percentage at or below 20% in both the Pinto and the Highland Estates water systems in 2024. Maryland Water Service proposes to issue an $18.21 one-time credit to each Pinto customer for its over-recovery of water costs in 2024, and to implement a 12-month surcharge of $1.79 per 1,000 gallons to Highland Estates customers for its under-recovery of water costs in 2024. Staff recommends that the Commission accept Maryland Water Services filing and tariff revisions effective May 1, 2025. Thank you, and Barbara Weber from the Engineering Division and I are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Ready?
Morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Max Cook on behalf of Maryland Water Service, Inc. We've reviewed staff's filing and have nothing further to add. Here to answer any questions from the Commissioners. Thank you.
So, any questions for the company? All right. Seeing none, I move we accept the company's proposed Pinto and Highland Estates tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of May 1, 2025, allowing the company to issue a one-time credit of $18.21 to each Pinto customer and to implement a 12-month volumetric charge of $1.79 per 1,000 gallons for each Highland Estates customer. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbet.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye.
And item number 7 is a request from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company for a mandatory waiver of a CPCN requirement.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Roger Austin presenting on behalf of staff. On March 17, 2025, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company filed a request to the Commission for the Commission to determine that a project to reroute short segments of 8 existing 115 kV overhead transmission lines within BGE's Riverside property qualifies for a mandatory waiver of the requirement to obtain a certificate of public convenience and necessity pursuant to Section 7-207B 4 Romanet 1 of the Public Utilities Article. In the event that the Commission does not agree that the project qualifies for a mandatory waiver, the company requested that the Commission grant it a waiver for good cause pursuant to Section 7-207B 3 Romanet 2 of the Public Utilities Article. Staff has reviewed BGE's waiver request and finds that all of the statutory requirements for obtaining a mandatory waiver of the CPCN requirements as stipulated in Public Utilities Article Section 7-207B 4 Romanet 1 are satisfied. The Commission is therefore obligated to waive the requirements to obtain a certificate of public convenience and necessity. As background information, this transmission line rerouting project that qualifies for a mandatory waiver of the CPCN requirements is the result of BGE retiring and demolishing its existing 34 kV open-air switchyard and rebuilding it as a 115 kV gas-insulated substation on the current 34 kV switchyard footprint. The estimated cost of the transmission line rerouting project for which BGE is requesting a mandatory waiver is approximately $9.5 million. The cost of demolishing the existing 34 kV open air switchyard is approximately $4.7 million. The cost of the new gas insulated substation is approximately $85 million. All costs will be allocated to BGE ratepayers. The retiring and demolition of the 34 kV open air switchyard was presented for review in BGE's second application for a multi-year rate plan. Staff reviewed that project and found the expenditures being proposed by the company and the justifications given for those expenditures to be reasonable. Staff will continue to monitor that project to determine whether the final expenditures remain within a reasonable variance of the proposed $4.7 million cost. The new 115 kV gas insulated substation that will be constructed is a transmission level project that is not subject to a CPCN proceeding. And since it is a transmission level project, BGE does not have to present it for review before this commission in a rate case. However, if the commission wishes to challenge any aspect of the 115 kV gas insulated substation project, it may do so before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. For the transmission line rerouting project itself, staff recommends that the Commission grant BGE's request for a mandatory waiver of the requirement to obtain a CPCN to reroute existing 115 kV transmission lines at its Riverside substation pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7-207B 4 Romanet 1. The end.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Sushman?
So with the end, is there a moral to the story? Okay, so just so that I understand, what's the status of the project now? Has the 34 kV substation been demolished?
I don't know. I'd have to
Okay.
ask BGE.
And then for the 115 kV substation replacement, are you suggesting that we don't do a prudency review of that?
You can challenge it if you want, but,
But we would-
staff cannot do that.
Okay, but making the determination to replace the 34 kV with the 115 kV, that's a decision the company will make and is not subject to prudency review.
Not by staff, no.
Okay, but when they ask for cost recovery, we don't do a prudency review of that? So it's just an automatic, they do it and we have to allow for it?
It's you can challenge it at the federal level. They don't need to come in here and they don't need to come.
Okay, so this
a
is,
transition.
so this is part of the, whatever FERC approves
Correct.
has to get passed through. Okay, so, all right, and then in terms of the rerouting, what's the necessity of doing the rerouting of the lines?
Well, since they are rebuilding the 115 kV substation as a gas insulated substation. If you look at exhibits A and B, you will see where they have to reroute the lines from the old 115 kV open air switchyard to the new 115 kV gas insulated substation.
Okay, so, and are they, since they're increasing the capacity of the substation, are they increasing the capacity of the transmission lines?
They didn't say anything about increasing the capacity of the substation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the staff. Just one question. Staff is recommending today that the commission shall approve the waiver request here. But if the commission determines that this falls under the discretionary approval level as opposed to a mandatory approval, does staff believe that the company has met all of the requirements for a discretionary approval?
Well, if a discretionary waiver were required rather than a mandatory waiver, then we would need to go and investigate the background projects that require this rerouting project. That would be why they need to rebuild why they need to demolish the 34 kV substation and rebuild the 115 kV substation as a gas insulated substation. We would need to go and do a prudency review of that project. But since it's a mandatory waiver, that's now beyond the requirements of this box sheet.
Right. Is there an estimate, and I understand this might be a bit of an assumption or just a general opinion, but is there an estimate of what type of timing impact it would be if the commission were to determine this was a discretionary waiver as opposed to?
Yeah. So I think in their application they said they want to start this project in April 2027. 2027.
But how long would the review take from staff's perspective?
So that is why they came in two years early, just in case it was determined that a CPCN was required. So repeat your question. You're asking how long it's going to take to.
If the commission determined that this was not a mandatory waiver, but instead fell under the discretionary waiver provision, how much time would the staff need to review the filing as you've proposed or suggested was necessary in order to complete it?
We would probably need several months.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Richard.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, I had to first start with similar questions around the mandatory versus discretionary. In circumstances like this, when you're looking at a project, do you start with the assumption that, okay, the reason for the mandatory was for essentially rebuilds, things that were going to be very similar to what exists and for its purpose. And I wanted to ask, in this circumstance where we're talking about more poles and for a significant rebuild of this entire site, why do you think that this is still mandatory and not really should be more discretionary and it should be before us to consider it as discretionary and perhaps even consider whether it should be just for a full CPCN?
Because if you read what they're coming in for a waiver for the rerouting of these 8 segments.
And I saw that, but do you agree that this does, warrant our consideration that maybe this is more discretionary and not, automatically mandatory?
Well, a strict reading of what they are doing and a strict reading of the regulation says that it's a mandatory waiver.
But there's going to be additional, pylons and poles, and why doesn't that change at least some of the consideration here? And we're talking about going from 34 to 115 kV so the purpose is significantly changing. It's not really a full just rebuild of what's existing.
The rebuild of the 34 kV and the 115 kV gas insulated substation has nothing to do with the rerouting of what they're asking for. They're asking for a waiver to rebuild these, to reroute these 8 transmission lines, and that work falls strictly on the mandatory waiver. And I think staff counsel wants to say something.
Michael Dean on behalf of staff. Of course, if the commission wants to consider the entire project, the commission could determine that it doesn't fall under either the mandatory or discretionary waiver provisions of the statute and require a CPCN for the whole project.
Oh, okay. That's very helpful. That's where I want to get to some other questions. So, just as far as costs, you mentioned that this first came up in the multi-year rate plan hearing. At that time, I'm just trying to reconcile. We used a number 4.7 million, and then there's 9.5 million. Was it originally reviewed by staff and was considered reasonable, deemed reasonable at 4.7 million?
Yeah, so the 4.7 million is for the demolition of the 34 kV switchyard. So that was all we saw when they came for their
Okay, so at that time we weren't looking at this as a $106 million project. You were just looking very narrowly at this as a $4.7 million project.
Correct.
Okay, so now it's a $9.5 million project. That's really
On
what
top of the 4.7 million.
Okay, for the rebuild.
And then on top of the 85 million.
Okay. And as far as I think you cover very well in the buck sheet that this project is really, it's a supplemental project, and so it really hasn't been given any type of prudency review or consideration how it fits into the overall regional RTEP plan. Did you, and then, but you do point out that we can, if we have concerns, take it directly to FERC. In your buck sheet, you talk about a report, okay, and I wanted to find out, when you said that the staff provided the report to the commission for review, can you explain what exactly happened and did, who presented it, I guess, what staff, and was it reviewed by the commission?
Staff. You mean the presentations that we forwarded to
Staff has forwarded the presentations to the commission for its review.
Right.
Then it says, if the commission wishes to challenge any aspect regarding the building of the new 115 kV gas insulated substation, it may do so before FERC. So did that review take place? Did staff have any comments on again this presentation?
So these are BGE's internal presentations that we forwarded to staff, and those are confidential presentations, and I'm not comfortable speaking to anything that's in those presentations.
Okay,
Staff did forward them to the executive secretary for presentation to the commissioners.
Okay, but nothing has happened at this point to allow us to make any kind of analysis as to whether or not this is something we ought to go to FERC and say, hey, this isn't something that we think should go forward, or maybe in its current form, whether or not it should go forward. And I just bring that up because the timing is important here. We've had a lot of projects, RTEP projects coming our direction, immediate need projects. A lot of projects are being proposed to us. So it's hard to know at this point how this fits into the overall plan. I mean, we have a lot of expensive projects before us, and we have now one more $100 million project, and it doesn't seem like we're having a chance to see the big picture here. We're getting this kind of piecemeal. And given that it's supplemental, it hasn't really had any review by PJM and how it fits in. We're just told it'll do no harm. Although I would say $100 million, I think we need something more than just a do no harm. That in itself is an issue. So again, what level of analysis has this been given by staff?
We did not, because it's beyond the scope of the bug sheet.
Okay, but, well, I mean, as far as timing, would it make sense for us to approve this today before we have made a determination whether this is something we want to go to FERC or ask further questions about how this fits into the bigger picture, the plan that we have before us now?
Well, in that respect, of Michael Dean again for staff, the commission could defer approval of this until it had a chance to review the entire project and all the aspects and phases of it.
Okay, well, so that's an option we have before us. Okay, well, Mr. Chair, I have more questions, but I think at this point I have enough concern, I think enough questions about the bigger picture of why we're doing this project, particularly given everything else that's happening right now. I'm also concerned really about, understanding a cost containment plan. I mean, because this same company has an immediate needs project for the Brandon Shores Wagner site, and that started out as a $750 million project, and now it is already $1.5 billion projects. And there's I think, a lot of concern we should all be having about the costs that we're going to be imposing on our ratepayers, because all these transmission projects, they, especially if it's deemed supplemental, go 100% just to our local ratepayers, and many of them will have a much higher ROE and all kinds of adders that go onto it. So we're not just talking about BGE's, ROE. We're talking 10 to 12%, range of ROEs that go into these projects. So again, I'll stop there with my question for now. But I think we need a lot more information personally before we can, proceed with this particular request today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Barbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Commissioner Richard asked a lot of the questions I was thinking about in terms of the global impact of this kind of project within the whole ambit of what's happening. But let me make sure that I'm clear about what you are saying in this buck sheet and to us today. Essentially, you're saying that because this is exclusive FERC jurisdiction, we don't really have a role with respect to prudency. Is that what I think I heard you say?
What, to clarify that,
Mm-hmm.
any prudency questions should be raised with FERC. It's not that there's no prudency review, it's just that the forum to raise them is at FERC.
Okay, and this is because this is primarily a transmission type facility. Is that what you're...
Yes.
I see. Okay. I think I'll direct my other questions to the other witnesses later on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Sussman.
Okay, so I have a question in light of some questions that Commissioner Richard had asked of you. And this actually goes to issues I've had with other transmission projects that were actually not really the project, but pieces of a project. And so I'm concerned about defining something as a project so that it fits within the exception for CPCN, so that it avoids us having being able to actually look at the project as a whole. So you start to have little pieces of a project. All the different pieces come before us, and we miss the whole. And I think you understand what I'm asking. So how do we define project here? I mean, is this a project, or is this sort of a piece of the whole that allows for the company to ask for a mandatory waiver and thus avoid our ability to actually review the project as a whole. Because the concern I have is we have enough of these pieces and we end up not being able to review the project because each of them taken on its own could satisfy the conditions for waiver, but not the project if you look at the project as a whole.
Michael Dean again. Perhaps it's best when you look at the statute, the 7-207 refers to the approval for constructing a transmission line or a generating station. So when they're filing for the necessary approvals for the whole project, they look at it as, well, this is how you get permission to do the transmission part. Normally, a CPCN for transmissions do not include the substations. So even if
Right, but we're not talking about. I understand that the position of the staff that substations are the jurisdiction of FERC. So I'm not talking about substations. I'm talking about, I mean, as Commissioner Richard pointed out, this provision really was sort of intended to avoid situations where you've got a line, an existing line, and you're just replacing it because there's a line failure or so that you don't sort of overburden the CPCN process. But it's hard for me to imagine that the General Assembly thought this was a good idea to have projects be separated out so that a company can avoid having to go under the CPCN process by taking different pieces of the project and sort of technically meeting the conditions of this provision where you're not seeing the project as a whole. So we're not talking, they want to replace the 34 kV with the 100 kV substation. That is part of a larger project, is my understanding. And I guess what I'm not understanding is why we're not just reviewing the larger project, but considering considering these projects piecemeal, because it seems to me that that's a really good way of undermining our authority. And I'm not suggesting that that's what the company is doing, but the effect of that could be undermining our authority and our responsibility.
Well, staff certainly isn't trying to allow the company to evade the commission's authority of review and of the prudency of projects and the need for the projects.
Right, and I appreciate that. So what I'm asking is, what is the project? Because I mean, my sense is that it's more than this. And if it's more than this, then this is a piece of the project, but it's not the project. We should be reviewing the project. And if that involves CPCN, then that's where we should be. We shouldn't be looking at a waiver, whether it's mandatory or discretionary.
Yes, in my previous answer, I did indicate that if the commission could clearly decide that a waiver is not appropriate in this case and that it should be a CPCN.
Right. So I guess my question, Mr. Dean and Mr. Austin, I mean, do you have a sense that the project is, there is a project here that's bigger than what we're looking at in the buck sheet?
Well, it certainly could be considered to be an overall larger project.
Okay.
I mean,
as in that there's other things that they're doing.
It could be an overall work on the ring bus around Baltimore, case 9500, for example, 9600, excuse me. Case 9600 was a replacement of the uh, uh, crossing at key bridges of that transmission line, which hooks up into the substation.
Okay, well, it seems to me that we have to get a better sense of what it is we're looking at now and understand what the project is, because I'm not convinced that what we're looking at now defines the project. I have the sense that the project is broader than that, and if that's the case, we shouldn't be taking up projects piecemeal, because that does have the effect of undermining our authority and our responsibility. Maybe we should hear from the company, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Marve.
Yeah, thanks for the second bite at the apple. Let me ask a question just for the sake of my clarification. When we undertake a prudency review, the burden of proof is with the company. But in this instance, if we were to go before FERC and to question the prudency, ask FERC to examine prudency, would in that instance, would the burden of proof rest with us? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I can't, I'm not as familiar with the FERC rules for review of prudence.
Well, certainly with respect to our prudency reviews in the distribution system, the burden of proof rests with the company that is asking for us to pass judgment on a project, correct?
Yes, by statute.
Okay. Well, if you could clarify for me in a later communication where the burden of proof would rest when we go before FERC, I'd appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else? All right, so, go ahead.
Thank you. Crystal Barnett on behalf of BGE. I want to thank staff for its detailed analysis and recommendations, and the company's available for questions.
Okay, questions for the company. Commissioner Richard?
Yes, thank you. We heard some of my earlier concerns. Let's just talk about this project itself. Now, obviously, you're primarily here because you would like to have the mandatory waiver just for the very small part of it, and of the over $100 million project. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what you're primarily here for.
The CPCN mandatory waiver addresses the overhead transmission component only. The rest of the project is at a FERC level review.
Okay. And the company decided to propose this not as part of the baseline RTEP plan. You're proposing this as a supplemental project. Is that correct?
It was approved as a supplemental project last year by PJM.
Okay. And so it didn't really have the benefit of a full prudency review or consideration by PJM of all the other projects, all the other concerns that and violations and market efficiency projects that PJM is basically charged with doing. This was on the side.
So just like this is CPCN with the overhead transmission is at the Maryland Commission level review.
Okay.
The substation itself will be reviewed by FERC. So it's not that there's no further review. It's just there's different reviews, and that this commission's role is looking at overhead transmission line.
Okay, but it has already been given to FERC, okay, by PJM, and at this point, it is presumed prudent. Isn't that correct? It is presumed by FERC that it will be built unless the state, we actually take a look at it and say, hey, we would like you to review this project. That's kind of the way supplemental projects have at work with FERC. Isn't that the case?
Well, PJM and FERC are separate entities, so just because PJM says it's a project that should be supplemental doesn't mean
Okay.
that FERC wouldn't look at it for additional prudency. And so there's another review here that I understand the commission's concern. You want to review the whole project. Well, that's done by another body. There's a different agency that's looking at that. That's a transmission level project. That's why there's a difference. That's why we have a mandatory statute in this case.
Okay, let me ask you, is there a case open right now at FERC to review this project?
Well, the project hasn't moved far enough along quite yet, and I'm not familiar with the FERC level. Excuse me one minute. project was presented to PJM and approved as a supplemental project. I'm not sure what the status is with it at FERC. We have FERC counsel within our company that handles the FERC level transmission work.
Okay. That seems like it's kind of important for us to know that because, again, if we're going to play our appropriate role, it sounds like we haven't yet actually had an opportunity to analyze this proposed total project and to also have a chance to consider it in the context of all the other projects currently that either have been approved by FERC and PJM, and to ensure that it continues to be an essential and prudent project. Am I correct that that's probably kind of the state we're in right now with this project? Unless we take an action, this supplemental project, like most supplemental projects, will just be approved by FERC.
I don't think that's the case,
Okay.
Commissioner. What I'll do is I'll get with FERC counsel when I return to the office, and I can update the commission on the status if there is any at the FERC level.
Okay, because you do talk about, again, the benefits of this project, but looking at these, they seem to be very boilerplate, and it'd be good to, again, have a better, more detailed understanding how this is going to benefit the customers, because, again, as you're very well aware, we have billions of dollars right now of proposed projects that have just been proposed for the state, and so there's an enormous cost coming to Marylanders for these projects. So you're here wanting to get started on yet another $100 million project, and it really hasn't been evaluated in the context of all the other projects, and also in given that that level of review that PJM would otherwise if it were not deemed supplemental.
Well, let me add just sort of a little bit of background on this full project, if the commission will give me a moment on that. This is a 1947 substation that we're proposing in the larger project. It was built to operate as a straight bus configuration. So the foundations of the substation are deteriorating at this point. We spend a lot on corrective maintenance on that particular substation. It doesn't meet design standards and configurations. It's not able to accommodate new technology. And the cost to repair this substation would be more than a rebuild. These are
Okay.
all things
Well-
the company has considered at that transmission level of the project. In terms of benefits, this will benefit a large area of BGE customers. It feeds transformers, obviously, that are benefiting the immediate community, but also there are 2 circuits that go to Windy Edge, White Marsh, Parkville, North Point, Fitzel Substation, and the Trade Point Atlantic areas. So that's a pretty broad area of customers that will benefit from this particular project. So this isn't a project that's just for immediate area customers.
Yeah, and I agree. After appropriate review, and also a review in the context of projects that have been proposed after this,
I
this
understand the
project,
commission's concern.
we
but I
do
think-
need to understand if this is still needed, if it's a priority, and if it can be if it's affordable. I think at this point. So
I would also, as staff mentioned, they did supplement the commission with the presentations that were CEII materials attached to staff's
Yep.
recommendations. And that will give, I think, the commission more background perhaps that they're looking for in this matter. But I just want to remind the commission that this is a mandatory waiver. It's a shall. This is what the legislature decided. And I appreciate that this commission is not a fan of this particular statute, but it is statutory and we do meet all of the requirements. So, while I understand the concerns, we meet the requirements and we're respectfully asking that the commission grant.
And I think you've heard today that we have some questions whether it does apply. It doesn't matter if we're fans of the statute or not. I mean, I think we need to look at the statutes in totality and what our responsibility is to ratepayers. So with that, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Barbe? I'm good. Commissioner Linton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Let me start by asking the same question that I asked staff earlier. If the commission determined that for whatever reason the company has not met the mandatory waiver requirement, it sounds as though the company anticipated that this might need to fall under the discretionary portion of the statute. What would be your expectation or estimation of how much time it would take to complete the review under that section of the statute?
So it would be staff's review as discretionary. I filed it as an alternative position. We do believe, it's not because I thought we didn't in some way meet the mandatory. I think we do meet the mandatory provision of the statute. I put that additional information in case the commission had some concerns with mandatory, they would be able to grant it as a discretionary.
Okay, and so the staff would be seeking a lot of the information and necessary from the company in order to make their review. There certainly would be some actions that the company would have to take as well, and it's my understanding that you might have already started that.
So in our application, I provided the information we would ordinarily provide for the commission to grant it as a discretionary waiver. That's contained in our application, but certainly if staff wanted additional information, the company would provide it.
Okay, so when I asked the staff earlier, it sounded as though they were under the impression that they still needed to do the investigation.
Well, I think because their buck sheet was crafted for a mandatory recommendation, and if they were to maybe look further, they would have to do another buck sheet for a discretionary waiver, for an evaluation of that. That's my understanding.
Yeah, and it probably won't be a buck sheet since it's mostly confidential information. I don't know how we'll handle it in some kind of a closed hearing.
Yeah, so it sounds like it'd be a little more than buck sheet. Maybe not as extensive as months and months of investigation, but somewhere in the middle. I mean, it wouldn't be next week, for example.
I understand.
No.
Nobody, you suggested next week? Is that what we got?
It wouldn't be next.
It would not be next week.
No,
Okay. All right.
it would be months.
It'd be months, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I know the company's also attempted to reach out to some of the community that could be impacted by this. What has been their response?
So we haven't had any communication. We have had direct communications also with the representatives in the area. The way that the Riverside substation property is configured, there's a water on one side, and then there's a Jersey wall, and then a highway. And so we did reach out to the closest community. As we take these and reroute these lines, they'll actually improve their view because we'll be taking down some of the towers that they currently see, and when we place new ones, they actually won't see those. So I think the community, that's probably why we haven't heard from the community, is it will improve their view.
Okay, so as of right now, there hasn't been anyone claiming they don't want you to do this or opposition or anything of that sort?
No, Commissioner, not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
We do have Aceto as a company that we've retained to help if we have community outreach that we need to do in this case.
Okay. All right, lastly, because I know this project, this line and this development has been here for many years now, and so in some of the materials I've seen that there's been some, I'll just say, environmental impacts to the area.
So,
Is there any, what's the plan to handle that?
so that would be part of our permitting process, and we will be doing an environmental impact study on the area. The site has been an electric in use for 200 years as we've had equipment there for 200 years. So, we will be doing an environmental impact study, and whatever those requirements and conditions are, the company will comply with those.
All right, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Sushman.
So I'm going to go back to the concern I have about how this effort is being defined. So it's a supplemental project under PJM.
That's correct.
Okay. And as a project, it's what's represented in the buck sheet. Is there anything beyond that when you're considering this as a project?
Not from the Maryland Commission level, no. It's just for the overhead transmission. In terms of, it's part of a larger project, the substation, yes, it is.
Okay, so tell me about the larger project.
You mean in terms of how we're
Well,
figuring? I'm not.
Well,
following
I
that.
keep hearing that this is a piece of a larger project. I still don't have a sense of what that larger project is. So if you can.
Yeah, I'm gonna have my colleague John Strawbridge, who is BG Senior Project Manager, give you an overview of that project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, So at the Riverside substation, there's multiple yards. There's a 230 yard, a 115, a 34, and a 13. Right now, the 115 yard is what this project is about. It's to replace that 115 yard. That 115 yard was put in 1949, and we've had a lot of issues with it. And what we'd like to do.
So it's a 34 kV yard now. You want to convert it to 115.
Excuse me. No, I'll make a clarification there. We have multiple yards at Riverside substation. We have a 230 yard, a 115, a 13, 34, and a 13.
Okay.
The 115 yard is what this project is about. We want to replace that existing 115 yard with a new 115 yard.
So what does that have to do with the 34?
So we can't replace the 115 in its current location, otherwise it'd be out of service for multiple years.
Okay.
So right now the 34 yard is no longer needed. So there is an effort to demo that 34 yard. That is the other project that was mentioned, which really doesn't tie into this project other than we want to utilize that space that existing 34 yard is to build a new 115 GIS building and included substation. Once that 115 yard is built, we then have 8 transmission lines on the Riverside property that we'd like to then tie into that new GIS 115 yard. Once that is done, we would then demo the existing 115 air insulated substation.
And that's the scope of the project.
Correct.
Okay. So when we're talking about project, the only transmission piece of the project are the 8 towers, the new towers that are being moved.
Correct. And just to clarify, it's not 8 towers. There's 8 transmission lines that tie into the existing 115 yard. I'd have to ask Ben.
Okay, so those are 8 lines,
8
so
lines.
multiple towers.
Correct.
Do you have a sense of how many towers we're talking about?
22.
22. There's numerous towers that are going to come down, and if you want to know the exact number, I have one of the transmission engineers here today with us, and he could get into the details of the
Okay,
exact.
and that is the scope of the project.
Correct.
And does it have a relationship to any other project that BGE is looking to?
Not that I'm aware of. So this is a project to replace. We're replacing. BG&E replaces aged
Okay,
infrastructure.
so this is a discrete project. It's not connected to sort of some of the larger projects that PJM is looking at.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, so I think what we're going to do is, there's enough questions from us regarding whether to grant any kind of waiver, and if so, what kind of waiver. We're actually going to take this under advisement. We may have some questions both for staff and the company, just to fully flesh out what this is about, and then, but we will make a decision on that in short order. So, oh, okay, sure.
I apologize. This is more of a kind of administrative. I do take note that we have this report, this confidential report. It has a couple terms on it that I don't fully understand, and that is, it needs to be handled in accordance with FERC standards of conduct, confidentiality, and propriety. So I know it's been, emailed to me. But is there something we should know about how we share this report with each other, with staff, or forward it? I mean, again, this is something I've not seen before.
So I think within the commission, we are all eligible to receive CEII information.
Yes,
So
okay.
you-
Okay. I just want to make sure that we didn't have some other standard of handling that we need to be informed about. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.